That's the biggest thing is I think educating people that taxes isn't just a once a year thing. We need to deal with it throughout the year. And especially as business owners, a lot of these businesses, they're new and they're growing and they're changing. And you have to understand your tax obligations as that change happens. We can't just wait.
Welcome to the RV Entrepreneur Podcast, the weekly show for nomads, work campers, RVers, and entrepreneurs looking to earn a living or build a business while enjoying the RV lifestyle. This week's host is Glynn Willard. Let's settle in and enjoy the RV Entrepreneur Podcast, brought to you by RV Life.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the RV Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Glynn Willard, your host this week, and today I have the honor of speaking with the tax queen, Heather Ryan. And in 2016, she and her husband began their full-time RV lifestyle. And it was during her time on the road she realized there's a real need for tax professionals with the knowledge to keep nomadic business owners away from tax-related red flags. And seriously, when your tax situation is as unique as an RV entrepreneur's is, you want someone who truly knows the lifestyle. But before we explore Heather's tips, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Are you ready to elevate your RVing adventures? With RV Life Pro, you're not just getting a service, you're gaining a reliable companion for your journey. From planning your trips with precision, to navigating with confidence, and even connecting with a vibrant community of fellow RV enthusiasts, RV Life Pro is your all-in-one solution. Don't just dream about the perfect adventure, live it. Visit RVLife.com today and discover how RV Life can enhance your RVing experience.
Heather, the tax queen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me today.
I'm really excited to speak to you because you cover a topic that for nomads and the nomads that are running their own business can be extremely complicated. But before we get into what you do and how you handle nomads and their taxes, in the past, you were a full-time RVer, but now you've moved into part-time RVing. How did you get started in this RV life?
Sure. So my husband and I both worked, we shared the third bedroom of our house as an office and working from home. And we kind of said, why are we just sitting here in an office, like stationary? Why can't we go and explore? When we're done working for the day, be out, whether that's hiking or going to town and check out a new brewery, whatever it is. And it just sort of, I think we both started researching it at the same time and just said, hey, we want to do this RV thing. And then we just jumped in full on, deep end.
When was that?
That was in the fall of 2016.
Oh, you got a nice early start before everybody did it in 2020. Yes, good for you.
Yes, I did. And I watched the changes happen.
Right? I completely understand. I mean, there's nothing like waking up, 1 week and you're by a glacial lake, and then the next week you're over the Grand Canyon, but you can still get your work done. So,
Yep.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Before
starting your tax queen service, were you just working with, normal clientele for accounting, or what were you doing before this?
Great question. I've got normal clientele. So I did bookkeeping for a local company, and then I started doing some tax stuff kind of part-time. And so I did have an office. I just rented a space for tax season and had people come into the office. So it was actually a huge jump when I kind of let them go and decided to make a lifestyle remote. And some clients responded well and were fine doing remote and virtual because they'd already met me and trusted me. And some clients said, no, I want an office. So I have been doing taxes since 2014. So I'm on year 11. Yeah.
Good. Well, okay. So of those clients who are uncomfortable moving forward virtually, have any of them come back to you?
Some of them have, and some of them have stuck with me just via mail. So instead of using I have a client portal right now, some of them jumped onto that, but many of them just stuck with me via mail. And we work it that way.
Cool. So I'll air quote here. So you still have some normal clientele, but your niche at this point really is with RVing nomads, correct?
I do. Yes. Yeah. tax law doesn't change whether you have a business that is stationary or moving. I mean, it's still the tax law. So I can know both and help both kind of clients. So
Sure. Now, okay, so all of those clients, do the majority of those clients that are RV nomads, are they business owners or are they employed?
I really have a mix. I don't have numbers off the top of my head of how many are business owners and how many some are employed. I actually work with retirees as well, people that are work camping and might have multiple state returns, so it adds that complexity. So I have kind of the whole the whole shebang, we'll call it.
Do you have a preference? Do you like the challenge of someone who's in business?
I do love the challenge of someone who's in business. There's definitely more complications there, right? So we can work with more deductions, and it's just it's more fun. It's more fun. I'll say that it's more fun for me. But that's not to say I don't want to help out someone who's got a simpler return. Might just be a couple 1099 forms for like bank interest or something and some work camping job or a W-2. I'm still here. I think the biggest thing that I do for my clients is I'm available year round. So I don't charge you if you have a question in July or October. And it doesn't matter whether you're a business owner or a retiree or a W-2 wage earner. It doesn't make a difference. I want to hear as things change in your life. So.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, okay, so basically, if you're on retainer, your clients can reach out anytime with just a quick question via text or an email, and you have an answer for them.
Usually we do via email. So yes, the answer is yes.
That seriously, that's kind of nice. I mean, who doesn't want someone that can answer these tax questions, on an instant? That's
Yeah.
cool.
I mean, the idea is that I'm part of your team, right? I'm in your corner, just like you might hire like a lawyer or something to when you have questions, whether that's estate planning or business planning. And it's kind of even I equate it to like going to the dentist or the doctor, right? You have to go sometimes more than once a year for a checkup, for a cleaning, to make sure everything is all working correctly and you're not in pain. But if we wait until we have an emergency, then it is a pain, right, for everybody. So
Precisely. I like that you use the lawyer as the example there, as in I'm afraid to reach out to the attorney because I know that I'm going to see that on the lines in the bill.
yep,
But
yes,
for you, it's not like that. If they are part of your service, you'll just make a quick answer, correct, without charging them.
correct, yep.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's nice to know. Because I can tell you, I will not reach out to the attorney a lot of the times when I probably should.
And that's exactly what I want to avoid. Because people make changes and it does impact taxes, and then they come to me in February or March and they get a complete surprise, and I say, well, I wish you had come back to me last September when you made blah 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 change, or before you did it, so I could have advised you. So
Exactly. Well, the key with taxes, I really feel like is being proactive and knowing why you're filing what before it ever has to be filed. That way you can track things, correct?
correct. And that's the biggest thing is I think educating people that taxes isn't just a once a year thing. We need to deal with it throughout the year. And especially as business owners, a lot of these businesses, they're new and they're growing and they're changing. And you have to understand your tax obligations as that change happens. We can't just wait because yeah, that's when it hurts. And we can't go back, right? We can't implement strategies and things that might have saved you in 25 right now, like February of 25. I can't help you really on 24 because 24 is closed. What happened,
Exactly.
happened. So.
That's so true. Well, okay, so of your clientele, I mean, how many of them file as an LLC, or do you have any S corps or C corps?
I do work with S Corp, C Corps, partnerships. I will say an LLC is a legal entity.
Right.
So the taxable entities are the sole proprietor, the partnership, the S Corp, and the C Corp.
Exactly. And I'm sure you have a lot who are LLC who get that confused. Um,
Yes, that is probably the biggest question or misunderstanding, I like to say, because they think LLC is immediate tax thing. And I always have to say, well, who owns the LLC? Because that's how we look at it from tax perspective.
Right. So when you have an EIN based on your LLC, technically, if it's a husband and wife and you're a partnership, that EIN really is for a partnership, not so much the LLC, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify
And
and
that's
make sure.
actually one of the biggest confusions I get, because I get a lot of spouses who do form businesses together and they think that they can just file their 1040 and a Schedule C. And I say, nope, you created an LLC with both of you as members. You now have a partnership. And they
Exactly.
are surprised by that or confused, or it's just not something that's known and understood.
Right. Until they have to file their Schedule E now and their 1065 and stay on top
Yes.
of all of that. What fun. Who doesn't love this
And I
stuff?
tell them that the 1065 is due on March 15th, and they say, what?
Right. That's something I learned very early on in our business that we sold our business and we started in 2000. And I actually had an accountant sit down with me when we first started the business and teach me everything that I needed to file proactively so that I'd be prepared. And then whenever I had a question, and I bet you can't do this today, whenever I had a question, I called the IRS and they would simply help me and take the time to give me the answer,
Ooh.
which I don't think that happens anymore. Do you?
I don't think that happens. And I honestly can tell you that I have had to teach IRS agents on the phone tax law. So, and I know I'm not the only person who has helped taxpayers and had to educate the IRS on tax law. So,
Yeah. So we won't go on. We won't cover that one at all. So when we're zooming in on this LLC because I'm just curious on this, and maybe some of the listeners are. Is there a benefit for someone who's nomadic to file an LLC with their state that they live in?
So the benefit to an LLC is all legal, and that's in the title, limited liability company. And I'm not a lawyer, so I will not get into the legal aspects. But that's the whole point of having an LLC, is that legal separation of business and personal. And so I always guide people as far as a tax perspective, keeping things separate. If you have assets that you need to protect, and we better keep our business numbers separate. All of our finances, cannot be mingled, because that LLC goes out the window if that's the case. And
That's true.
That's the most I will touch on a legal advice, because I'm not a lawyer.
Oh, I completely understand. I mean, I believe it separates your liability and removes your personal assets from that particular company. And how you just mentioned that if you start to blend your personal finances with, like, you're using your business's credit card to make personal purchases, all of a sudden that's out the window.
Correct. Yep.
So,
and that's why I always stress a separate bank account. And some people say to me, well, I'm just a sole proprietor, right? I'm just doing business as me, right? So, well, like, I'm Heather Ryan. I'm just operating as Heather Ryan. It doesn't matter. Have a separate account. It doesn't have to be business specific. It just has to be a separate account. That all your money comes into that account, and you have a separate credit card. That's only used for business expenses. So that's really what I like to stress. If you use a credit card. Some people just use a debit. They don't even use a credit card, and that's fine. But
I feel like the moral of the story on this whole topic is keep your finances separate between your business and your personal. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that. And I agree 100%.
And it also, it makes things easier for tracking, right? So we're talking about taxes here. So we have to track our income and we have to track all our expenses. If we commingle everything, how do you go back 10 months, 11 months and remember what was personal and what was business? If you're looking through statements or something, that's really challenging. Like, I don't remember what I had for dinner last night. So who remembers what happens 10 months ago? So if we keep everything in its own account, there you go, right? It's all business.
For sure. Well, separate software. I mean, if you're using QuickBooks or anything, and you're not going to use that QuickBooks for your personal, you're going to use something entirely different. I'm an open source guy, so I use Newcash for everything. And I think there are a few others on the market that are open and free, like Wave. Do you have a preference? I mean, since we're on that subject.
Can I correct you there? Wave actually just started charging. It used to be
Oh,
free. They do charge. I think it's very minimal. It's like $15 a month, so it's not terrible. I still like Wave. I still recommend it. So I do. You're asking me what software. So Wave, QuickBooks is by far the biggest in the United States, and the biggest amount of clients and whatever. There's others out there. There's Zero, which is I think a little more confusing for a newbie who's not comfortable with the books. And I'm trying to think of some other ones. FreshBooks is out there. I think any software is better than no software. How's that?
This episode is made possible by Travelify. Want reliable internet without the hassle? Meet Travelify. It's portable, high-speed Wi-Fi that's ready to go wherever you are. From road trips to remote cabins. No tricky setup or permanent location required. Just plug in and you're connected. And here's the best part. No contracts, no commitments, and no reactivation fees. Pay only for the months you need. Travelify connects to the strongest available signal among multiple major networks, so you stay online with confidence, backed by a US-based support team that knows the outdoor lifestyle. Travelify, simplifying internet while you travel. Visit travelify.com today. That's TRAVLFI.com. Listeners can save 15% with code RVE at checkout.
absolutely. I mean, goodness, a spreadsheet can get way too complicated and very difficult to track anything. So yes, the software makes it wonderful.
Yeah.
Well,
And I do think a spreadsheet is fine for someone just getting started and has very little, few transactions, little expenses, and they're kind of overwhelmed with starting the business and they don't want to have to add the complication of learning how to do bookkeeping at the same time. And I do have like a profit and loss spreadsheet that I can share with my clients. So that does help. The biggest drawback I see is that people don't work on it. And so if you have to keep up with it, you have to work on it at least once a week and make sure you're entering everything in there, or it's not going to work for you. So that's really the biggest drawback I see.
do you think that was part of QuickBooks' move to making it a software as a service, where it becomes completely mobile and remote to where you can track it when you're not sitting in front of your computer? You can do it from your phone. Do you think that was the drive for that because people don't update frequently enough?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. I think in general, software has moved in that direction anyway to be more online and to be more remote because, yeah, I mean, even bigger stuff is now doing that. So I'm not sure that was originally, because QuickBooks has been online for quite a few years now. I know that they are phasing out the desktop, so they definitely see the benefit of that. I think it's also beneficial because if you have a team, it's so much easier for everyone to log into an online software than something hosted on a desktop. So
I agree. As I was making that statement, I'm like, this was monetarily driven and it's team based. So
yeah.
I think you're definitely right on that one. Do you think, or let me back up, how has that changed the landscape? All of these services, how have they changed the landscape for you as the accountant to keep track of all the bookkeeping from your clientele?
So some people are great at bookkeeping and they keep up with it just like they would a spreadsheet, and they log in however often they go in, and they're really good at it. And other people just don't update it. They don't understand how to use it. So I have kind of both perspectives. Sometimes there's a lot of cleanup and I have a lot of questions because things aren't in their proper place. And so it sometimes can make it more difficult. And sometimes the books are really clean and I just take their reports and I was like, great, we're ready to go. So it's kind of all over the spectrum, and there's, everywhere in between, obviously. So
I never thought about that. And now that you make this comment, I consult for a few businesses, and one of the businesses that I'm consulting for, the person who is in charge of the books, it's so bad and they're so messy that now that I think about it, I'm like, when they send that to their accountant, they must, develop a bald spot just from trying to organize their notes and their bookkeeping. And I'm talking on QuickBooks.
Yep.
So from your perspective, you never know what type of client you're going to get. It could be somebody who is super neat with their books and you're done in an instant versus the other person who I'm just now discussing. So
yeah. And sometimes I do recommend either going online. I mean, there's tons of YouTube, like QuickBooks has all kinds of videos and help tutorials, and just spending a little time in a downturn, like a down season for whatever business, and just spending a little education, educating themselves, understanding how to use it. Or if their business is doing well enough, hire a bookkeeper that knows what they're doing and just outsource it, because you don't have the time or the energy, and you should be focusing on your business and growing it and your customers or your products, whatever that is. So there's no one size fits all solution. How's that?
Sure. Well, I think you made a good point that even if your business is brand new, to start outsourcing that from day one sets you up for scaling, and it prevents mistakes. And those mistakes
Yes.
can be costly.
Yes.
So I'm imagining, as most of our listeners are RVers and many of them have businesses, and maybe many of them are thinking about starting a business. Maybe you can briefly talk about some of their startup expenses and how they can manage these costs and how they should actually track these costs so that someone like you can not pull their hair out, like I mentioned before, when you're doing their
Sure.
taxes.
So just tracking, the biggest things I see, are the most common, I guess I should say, is, getting registered. So if you're actually registering a legal entity with a state, there's the cost of that. You might use a service to do that, right? So that could add to that cost. There might be a lawyer involved if you have multiple people. So you have to actually write up documents for this legal entity that you're now forming. You might have a cost of a website. I'm trying to think of other things. It depends on what the business is, right? So different industries might have different costs, but those are the biggest ones that I see, the most common. And generally, they're not super expensive. We'll say they're under 5,000. So the IRS says startup costs, you're allowed to deduct up to 5,000 in the first year. If it's over 5,000, we have to amortize that. And that just means taking it over 15 years. So we're deducting it over 15 years versus 1 year. But
Sure.
generally speaking, the remote businesses, because we're working remotely, we have less costs. Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally makes sense. I wouldn't expect a startup
Yeah.
to be very expensive when it's fully digital.
Yep.
So
And
5,000 is nice to be able to write off everything in the first year. That's wonderful. When
mhm.
you mentioned amortizing over 15 years, is that applicable to everything for startup costs? I
Generally, yes, if they're startup costs. So the only time I really see things that are over 5,000 is when we're doing like manufacturing or research or something like more scientific, or there's just maybe more heavy equipment and things that are involved with it. That's really the only time I see that it's over 5,000.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, my last business was way over 5,000. I remember amortizing that out after, over, but I don't remember it being 15 years, but I have a feeling maybe it was. So I think it was
Just
just,
behind the scenes. You didn't know
it,
it was happening.
I did all my own books and I took care of everything and my own taxes. So like I said,
Yeah.
but I do remember amortizing. Anyway, that's beyond the point of this. Um, so we're talking about expenses and we're talking about nomads and
Mhm.
RVers. I bet one of the biggest questions you get is, what about my mileage? Can of
Yes, you hit the
worms, can
nail
of
on the
worms.
head with that one. Um, so generally speaking, you don't take mileage. I don't care that you say I'm working from the road and I drive around all over the country, or I just drive around Texas or whatever. It doesn't matter. That's your lifestyle choice. That's not a business purpose, right? So, like for me, I'll just use my business as an example because we all know what I do. I do taxes, and I don't need to be in Ohio or Montana or Texas or California. It doesn't matter what state I'm in, right? That has no connection to my business. So my mileage would never be taken. For example, that you would be able to take mileage. So I have some people that are a contractor. So I'm talking like an electrician that goes and spends 6 or 8 or 12 weeks working on site. Okay, mileage there might be might count because now you're actually driving to a job site. So can you see the difference there?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to put it. And really, if there's even a question, the listener, if they're an entrepreneur and they're taking a mileage deduction, if they're even questioning it, they really need to speak to someone like yourself.
Correct. And that's not to say you'll never have business mileage, right? You might need to go and actually visit with a client. You might go and attend an event or a conference related to your industry and related to your work. You might have to run business errands, go out and buy yourself a new computer, go and, whatever it is related to your industry. So there isn't necessarily zero mileage. It's just that your mileage as a traveler, right? Sometimes you can drive 10, 20,000 miles in a year, depending on how quick you move. And that mileage doesn't count towards business.
Right. We'll call it your moving day is not
Your
an
moving
expense.
day.
Moving day, as we always called it, every 7 to 10 days when we would move. Moving day,
Yep.
that is not deductible.
And so I guess the other difference that I point out is in case people are not full-time, because the RVers, right? We all have our own, however we make our lives work. So right now, I think we kind of touched on this at the beginning. I'm not a full-timer anymore. I was full-time for 5 years. We then bought home base, and now we go out. We have a van now, and we go and use it. And for example, I'm taking it to Escapade next month in March. So for me, that mileage counts because I'm leaving my home behind. Right. I have a physical house with a roof, windows, doors, and I'm taking my RV, which in this case is a van, and I'm driving it to an event for business where I'm speaking and attending. So that is one example where it actually could count. And that's a big difference I like to point out.
Sure. And that RV could be a Ferrari. It doesn't matter. That's your mileage to that event.
I don't know what Ferrari counts for sleeping in, but
Fair enough. I mean, if that's all you have, maybe you are sleeping in it. But I'll segue back to this one. I also have a camper van now, and we switched from a travel trailer, bumper pull travel trailer. What type of camper van did you end up finding for yourself?
So we bought a Sprinter cargo van, and my husband fully built it out to our liking.
How cool is that?
It was a lot of work and a lot of stress, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everybody. But we do like our van. And I think from 5 years of living on the road, we knew what we needed and what was important to us, so we could incorporate that into a van.
And how amazing is it to be rolling along in your van and you see the museum you want to go into, and you don't have to say, oh man, look at that parking lot. There's no way I'm fitting my travel trailer in there. But now you can do that. It doesn't matter.
It's amazing. And that is one of the reasons that pushed us towards the van, is that we felt like we were missing out on some stops and some things because we couldn't fit into a parking lot. I mean, heck, we couldn't even fit into some gas stations. And then, you have to really be planning your gas stops more. And now it's just like, oh yeah, we need gas. Okay, there's a gas station, so it's so much easier for us for traveling. And the other reason why we started, this isn't tax related, but we started doing home base is because we started traveling internationally. So we'll go to Europe and max our 90 days there. And so that's partially why. So we're still traveling. It's just not always in an RV.
Beautiful. You've moved on to the next chapter in life that I want to get to soon and get my kids out of the country more frequently.
An RV. We have rented RVs even in Europe. So we've done we did a month in an RV even in Europe. So it helped us a lot having that experience here in the US to make life a little easier, navigating in a foreign country with foreign language and different rules.
Okay, before I turn the talking back to the most exciting topic, taxes, would you recommend other people go to Europe and rent an RV for a month?
I would totally recommend it. I think it was an amazing experience. So, yeah.
Beautiful. I love it. So, okay, now we'll segue back to the exciting topics. Another one that crossed my mind that I thought about was the home office deduction. And it's something that I always refused to take when we had our standalone business, and then I still had an office in the house for the business. It wasn't worth it. And I felt like it was a red flag that was, and maybe not a red flag, but I felt like it was just a waste. to even take that deduction. Where do you stand on that with RVs?
Sure. So home office is always a red flag for even somebody that has a physical home, like whatever, sticks and bricks. It is a red flag. I generally say no to RVers to take that. There's exceptions. I have seen an artist, have what do you call it, a garage as a toy hauler, and that garage space is their studio, right? It is their equipment.
Right.
They have a desk or whatever, like a table to work on, whatever it is. That's where they do their work. And so to me, that makes sense. In reality, it saves maybe $20. And so I always leave it up to my clients or the taxpayer, because it's your return in the end, whether you want to have that red flag for $20 or whether you just say, it's fine, leave it alone. So
yeah, $20
the other
is hardly
exception is a
worth it.
bunkhouse. So I have some people that might work and have that office be the bunkhouse.
And that makes sense. But it might be too small to be worth it for them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I mean, I also think about it and I say, okay, someone in New York City, right, might have a really small apartment. They might have a 300, 400 square foot apartment, like a little studio apartment that they have a desk in a corner. So their home office would be kind of similar to an RV. So it can't be totally out there as far as size, but I just say it's not really worth the $20. Let's look at other expenses that are worth more.
Oh, there are plenty of other expenses. So absolutely. So we're on this subject and we're talking about taxes, and we all have a tax liability if we're generating revenue, unless it's a really small amount. Which brings us to paying quarterly taxes. Do you help your client base? Do you send them reminders of when they should pay their quarterly taxes? Do you have I'm listing off 100 questions at once.
Let's start with one question.
Okay. So let's stop there. Go ahead.
So as far as quarterly estimated payments, I do provide estimates for my clients. So people that I work with and I know their numbers, we base first off of the previous year. So usually the first 2 quarters, I just base off of the previous numbers. If your business is growing in leaps and bounds, or even just a little bit, and we might have to up those payments, I usually do it in the 3rd and 4th quarter. So I encourage my clients to come and check in with me in the summer and say, here's my business. Here's what's closed, January through June. I kind of know what the 2nd quarter is going to look like because I have some contracts in place already, or I'm kind of guesstimating this is what it's going to be. And then we can change. Sometimes it's down, sometimes it's up, and we increase for the 3rd and 4th quarter. But that's generally the way I work, and just to keep people on track. And some people just come to me in December and say, hey, I closed my books. Can you help me navigate my 4th quarter? Do I need to make a big payment? It's not ideal, but it's better than nothing.
It is. So. You're right. It's better than nothing. And, you don't want to, I believe there is a penalty if you come underneath, even if it's a chunk of money that comes in December. Am I correct?
Correct. So there is underpayment penalties. If you owe less than $1,000, there's nothing, and you have to pay in 100% of the previous year. So that's why I always base numbers off of that previous year. And sometimes that's skewed because people had W-2 jobs that were maybe higher, income earners, and now their income is dropping as they're starting a business. And so we don't necessarily want to match the previous year because that's a lot. And so then we look at paying 90% of the current year if they're going to owe.
That's fair. Well, that was going to be my next question. Do you have suggestions for calculating their estimated taxes for nomads? And you already answered that question.
Yeah, I work with my clients to do that. I don't send reminders, but I do provide payment vouchers, which to me kind of serves hopefully as a reminder. And if you're on my list, so my email list, I do send out reminders, and to my email list every month, I send out a newsletter. So any deadlines that are coming up, they'll be on that.
You know how valuable that is? I hope anyone listening to this, you have to go to tax-queen.com and check out Heather's whole website, because it's beautiful. It's well done. And I also want to suggest that they head over to your YouTube channel, because I spent some time going over some of your videos and they're incredibly helpful. There's there's not bad information. There's great information, and it's very detailed. So thank you.
I try. Again, this is my community, so I want to serve my community, and I mean, I obviously have a business, but I want to serve my community, give back.
I understand. That's how we were with my previous business. We had to run a business and I had all kinds of overhead and employees to pay, but you wanted to make your flock, your family feel so at home and comfortable with your information and able to ask you a question anytime that
Mhm.
in itself is so valuable to keep them coming back.
Yeah, and I have some people that will start so, like, right, we're starting to plan for RV life, and I'm trying to open a business now or plan for it, and they follow me, and they're on my email list, and then a year goes by or 2 years go by, and I hear from them, and they say, "I have been on your list. I've been, like, taking in all your information, but now I need help because I've actually started this business, and I'm lost." And it's just taken that time and built that trust with them that they've seen, and they have learned from me along the way, but they still want some guidance. So that's
Isn't
pretty
that
fun when
that
I get
it
those.
it's nice. It's flattering, isn't it? And it feels good. And when someone comes to you like that, you want to go above and beyond and like absolutely help them because they've already been part of your family, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so getting back into some of this other stuff, let's say that one of your clients is they live in South Dakota, but they spent 4 months in Arizona. And if I'm not mistaken, Arizona is one of the few states there you can spend 4 months versus 3 months um, for paying taxes in. So let's say they went beyond that and they generated like 35K during that time. Do you help them handle the tax ramifications?
I
And the,
do. So I do make people, I say, track a log, so a travel log, and it's just a matter of how many days or whatever have you spent in a state. And I think there might even be apps at this point, probably for tracking some of this. I don't know, but it's really how much business did you earn in that state. And sometimes it's not about how many days, but you stayed there. It's just that you earned income, so it's the amount of income. So I actually was just talking to someone this week, a client, and he worked in the state of Alabama. And I went and I had to look up the state of Alabama. There are a lot of states, right? So I have to sometimes look things up.
sure.
And the state of Alabama says if you earned more than 3,000 as a non-resident, you are responsible for filing a tax return as a non-resident. So he said, "Oh yeah, I've earned more than 3,000. So we better take care of that one." And so that's just one of the things that I help with my clients. I can't know every state off the top of my head, but I have resources to look up the information and make sure that we're staying in compliance.
Sure. Well, I wouldn't expect you to know every state.
Well,
By
there's
no
only
means.
43 because 7 states don't have state income tax, but
Good point. Didn't throw it. Okay.
there are still 43 states, which is a lot. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Well, okay. Well, how about if they're outside of the country?
So generally speaking, outside the country, I don't know how many countries there are, 160 or something. Every country has different rules, but most countries are taxed based on residency. And I don't know I mean, if you're nomadic, right? I don't know too many people that are actually establishing residency in some countries. I do work with some expats that actually have established residency in another country and live there full time, permanent. And they are taxed by that country on income. And as US citizens, we have to pay tax on worldwide income, but we get credits for taxes paid to other authorities. So there are provisions out there. We generally don't have double taxation
I
for
figured so.
expats.
Right. And double taxation doesn't happen state to state. So I figured that would be the case.
Correct.
Okay. Do you like that challenge of dealing with another country?
I do. I actually have clients all over the world. I've helped someone in Singapore, in Bali, in France, in Switzerland. And I help some people that are just truly nomadic outside the country. And we just deal with that as each situation arises. I always stress in that case keeping a record of travel, and it can be just a simple spreadsheet. where you've traveled and what dates you're there, and especially for countrywide. Because there's
Sure.
definitely tax provisions, and I will ask to see a travel log, and it's just easier to have it. And a lot of nomads actually keep all of that in anyway because they have to know where they're going and when they're going there, or where they're staying, or how they're getting there, if they're taking a train or a plane. I mean, you kind of have to know those details anyway. So it serves a dual purpose.
This episode is made possible by Travelfy. Want reliable internet without the hassle? Meet Travelfy. It's portable, high-speed Wi-Fi that's ready to go wherever you are. From road trips to remote cabins. No tricky setup or permanent location required. Just plug in and you're connected. And here's the best part. No contracts, no commitments, and no reactivation fees. Pay only for the months you need. Travelfy connects to the strongest available signal among multiple major networks, so you stay online with confidence, backed by a US-based support team that knows the outdoor lifestyle. Travelfy, simplifying internet while you travel. Visit travelfy.com today. That's TRAVLFI.com. Listeners can save 15% with code RVE at checkout.
For certain. I mean, that brings us back to two new takeaways now is, keep separate accounts and keep a record.
Yes. I say keep records of everything. That's my motto. Keep all your receipts. It's just record keeping is the number one thing for anything to do with taxes. So people always say, do I need to see the receipts? And I say, I don't normally need to see receipts. It's for your purposes. The taxpayer has to keep them, because if the IRS or even a state comes back and says, hey, we're questioning this line item on your return, you are responsible for producing the receipts and the proof that that expense is legitimate for your business. And without records, the IRS or the state can say that's not allowed, and they'll take it away from you. So,
exactly.
records.
You don't want to be in that position. I
can
tell you.
Nowadays we have like Google Drive. We have,
right.
I'm trying to think, I don't know, Dropbox, like OneDrive, Microsoft OneDrive. There's just, you name it. There's so many options out there to store our data on the cloud and remotely. So we don't need paper. I know we live in tiny homes and we travel, so paper is hard, but don't use that as an excuse. There's so many options out there to store stuff.
You're right. We have no excuse. Keep it. And let me tell you firsthand, I was audited by the IRS about a decade into my business, and I had everything filed, all of my receipts, everything. And I made it through with flying colors. It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And I could only imagine during that time what it would have been like had I not kept good records.
Yes. So you understand when I say first thing, and I feel like I'm always repeating myself, keep good records. But that's the number one thing. If anyone asks me, number one thing, records. It doesn't matter if you're a business owner or you just have W-2 wages and maybe some, mortgage interest or some retirement income. You just keep all those tax forms. Keep everything. Yeah.
Period. Keep it. And if you're remote and in that RV, then keep it digital. There is a way. There's always a way.
Yes.
So have any of you or any of your clientele been audited and you've had to sort of stand by them?
So audited is, I think it's a scary word that most people shiver or whatever over. An audit can be for one thing on a tax return. So it can be a very small, like a one line item. And to answer your question, yes, my clients have. And sometimes they just forgot about some tax form, right? So maybe there was 1 year that they sold some stock. That's not a normal thing that they do. And they just forgot to share it. And the IRS said, you sold this stock for $20,000. Why didn't you include it on your return? And it's just a mistake, right? People make mistakes. And I try to keep people from doing that, but I don't know everything that's happening in someone's life. So I can't really poke you and remind you if I don't know that it happened. But it happens. And I'm trying to think, I haven't gotten too many people audited for business purposes, expenses on there. I've had people audited over charitable contributions. So if your charitable minded and give a lot, make sure you keep all those records, and they will always provide you a letter with their EIN and their name and everything, how much you donated. And sometimes that's to church, can be to whatever organizations that you believe in, but make sure you keep those records. And I'm trying to think, the other thing is mileage. So keep really good records for mileage. And I have had someone, this was when I had a Sticks and Bricks on, he was a traveling salesman, and he put on 40,000 miles on his car every year, and he got questioned, and he brought out his handwritten log and said, here's all my miles, here's all the clients and customers that I visited. And they were like, check, good. And so again, it just proved to have the records.
Beautiful. And, we think of IRS agents as maybe aliens, but they're not. They're people too. So, I mean,
they're people. If you provide the documentation they're asking for and the time that they're asking for, if you're nice to them and respectful, they're just people.
Exactly. Well, you just said the key word. If you're nice and respectful, it goes a long way. And that goes a long way with anyone, I believe. So,
yes. And the other thing is to don't freak out, don't react I can't think of the word, but keep level-headed. If you're really struggling, then hire help to help you respond. Sometimes it's just about knowing what words to put in a letter or response. That's the key things that they're looking for. And, the average person might not know that knowledge and that lingo that is used with the IRS. So just hire some help. There's plenty of people out there. I help all my clients. If you get a notice from the IRS or the state, I always say, share it with me. I'll walk you through it. But if I'm not your person, right, and there's plenty of help out there. So the other thing I will tell you, as far as there's called a taxpayer advocacy service, and it is free and it's available to every U.S. taxpayer. So that is one way to just get some free advice and some free help. Sometimes they'll walk you through things. So,
that can be very beneficial. Wow, cool. All right, so you've got an RVer, they're an entrepreneur, and they've been going at it for a few years, and then finally you're helping them with their accounting. Finally, they decide to dissolve their LLC. Do you have any advice for someone who's doing that? Because I can imagine a lot of RVers get started in the whole RVing thing, and they're like, I'm going to start this business, and they file for the LLC, they generate some revenue, and then they decide it's not working for them. What advice do you have for dissolving that?
Advice. Number one advice is, we'll file the final return. Whether it's a loss or whatever, it doesn't matter. File the final return. Make sure you close. If you open an EIN, make sure you write a letter to the IRS stating that the business has closed and the tax year that is the final return. So let's just, for example, 24 is the final year of your business. You file that final return right now is tax season. So February, March, April, whenever. And then you send a letter to the IRS stating that EIN is closed. They should no longer look for a return for that business. It has closed December 31st, 2024. And that is probably the biggest thing that I see. If you're an S Corp or a C Corp, there's other complications, just part of tax filing, actually, that you liquidated that corporation.
Right. Yeah. You don't want them to perceive you as still operating that LLC.
Correct. And I'll give you the reason why. This is because if you fail to file returns, they can assess penalties, and they can say, hey, you failed to file this return. They can actually create returns for you based off of previous information. Ooh. And we don't want that.
No, because then you have a whole new fight on your hands.
Correct. So that's why I always say, make sure you close that EIN. And then it also makes it so no one else could ever falsify, like we have identity theft all the time, I feel like now. And yes. It can even be in that case that it's closed. If something gets filed, it's fishy. Something's going on.
Exactly. That actually is very good advice. Real closure, period. Just real closure.
And it's the same. This is maybe a sadder topic, but when we have a relative or someone pass away and we notify Social Security, right, that there's been a death. And so that Social Security number is taken off the books, and we know that person has died and they no longer expect returns with using that Social Security. There shouldn't be a W-2 filed with that Social Security number. And if there is something, it's flagged in the system. So it's the same idea, because that EIN, or the employee identification number, for those who don't know what that means, because we've been talking about that, is basically a Social Security number, but it's for your business.
Exactly. Right. And you don't want someone taking and using that EIN for their own uses.
Correct. Yep.
So we've talked about the 2 takeaways, keep good records and, of course, track everything and keep separate accounts. Is there anything else that you advise people to do that would make your life easier as an accountant?
To make my life easier? I don't know. Those are really the big things. I think it's also communicating. When something changes, whatever it is. I mean, I've had clients have a baby. I've had clients get divorced. I've had clients where their business took off. All of a sudden, whatever it is that they did, it connected with their clients or their customers, and they went gangbusters, and they waited to talk to me about it. And to me, that's a big mistake. Get to me as soon as you can when, oh my gosh, this big thing hit, whatever. I created this new product and it's a sensation and everyone's buying it, and it's touch base with me. Let's have a call. Let's email back and forth if you don't have a lot of time or you want to do it at midnight when I'm sleeping. And let's just touch base. So really communication. We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. It's like you're afraid. You said you're afraid to talk to your lawyer, right? Because you're going to get a bill. Well, I'm not going to send you a bill to ask me a question or to just check in with me. I encourage it.
Good. So proactively stay in front of it. Let's hope that happens for, all of your clients where their business just explodes and, they need
happens.
to. It does.
Yeah.
It's a great fantasy for some, and it's a great reality for others. So be proactive and let your accountant know immediately, because there are going to be changes in what you track.
And I think it's also avoiding surprise. And so especially new business owners are sometimes surprised by how much they owe or what they owe. And they don't understand about self-employment tax and different obligations that are all new to them. And so by coming and establishing a relationship and communicating with somebody who has that knowledge, you're going to avoid a surprise later. You're going to be able to save for taxes as your business is doing well throughout the year. And you're going to say, oh yeah, you told me I had to save for taxes. So I have this $10,000 sitting in this account. It's ready to go. I'm ready to pay my bill. And I'm not telling you all of a sudden, oh, you owe $10,000 and I can hear your mouth drop just through the phone, and you get upset or nervous and you say, well, I didn't save for that. And so I try to avoid that feeling, right? Because nobody likes that. I don't want to tell you that you owe amount of money and you don't have it saved. So
exactly. Being prepared for that is such a key. I in my previous business, I always took 25% of the net and I made sure that it was always available in the capital account. That takes it beyond the multiply by 0.923 and then multiply by 0.153. So we're getting about 15%, and just have it there and have it ready to go, and don't get married to that money. It's not, it's one of your expenses.
Sounds like you knew what you were doing or you had help through it, but many people don't. And so I actually sometimes will recommend having a separate account. So sometimes I just say, get a high yield savings account and put that money in there, because some people, when they see money in an account, they think they can spend it. And so if we put it in a separate account, it's out of sight, out of mind, and I can't spend it. It's not money that I have to use. And so that is a helpful tip. And there are some banks that will let you have different buckets. So you have one checking account, but you have different buckets as part of that checking account. And it just helps them kind of say, okay, that money there is taxes and it's not money I can spend. It's not money I can go buy a new computer with or have other business expenses that's set aside.
Exactly. And that's such a key to not getting into trouble and not overpaying yourself when you should have been paying your taxes. And I'm sure that's common.
And avoiding the dread of taxes and the surprise of taxes.
Right. Isn't it wonderful when you pay all of your quarterlies and then you finally file and it's like, oh, I actually overpaid by $20. Let's just apply that
Yeah.
to next year. I don't know anything.
Yeah. It's a really great feeling to know that you've kept up with things and you're doing things correctly. And again, you're avoiding that surprise. You're avoiding any kind of, I don't know, dreaded money talk, right? That we don't like.
I like it, but yes, many don't like that. Yes.
Many don't like it.
So is there anything else you would like to add about staying out in front of your, we'll call it our tax responsibilities?
The only other thing is, especially higher income earners, a business, if you stay ahead of things and be proactive, there might be tax planning or tax strategies that we can implement during
Ooh.
the year to help lower your obligation. And the only way is by touching base with somebody who has that knowledge and having that relationship. So,
and it comes back to being proactive. Brilliantly
Yep.
said. And then,
Yep.
So like I said earlier, I will throw this out there. I think your website, tax-queen.com is wonderful. Everything you need is there. It flows nicely. And your channel is wonderful. And I know, I'll put everything in the description of where you can reach out. But is there any other places that our listeners can reach out to get in touch with you?
I am on Instagram and I have a Facebook page, so you're welcome to follow me there. And I know we were kind of talking about some tax deadlines and things, and I always post when there is a tax deadline. So, like if it was January 14th or something, the 15th, I might say, hey, fourth quarter estimates due tomorrow. Don't forget. So that's one way to just kind of be reminded, but not necessarily be a client of mine. So, and still get valuable information.
You just nailed it. Still get valuable information, which I mentioned earlier is extremely valuable if you're a business owner, even if you're not. It's good stuff.
Yeah. I'm not there for the likes, I promise.
Good. You're there to bring in value. Thank you for being that way. I love it. Well, yeah. Heather, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. And I really hope the listeners, I know that they got something out of this, especially if they're traveling and they're starting a business or they just don't know how to manage their taxes while they're on the road. You've brought some true insight, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Heather is definitely on top of the tax code when it comes to nomadic lifestyle. Today, she presented some very important takeaways. First, keep records of everything. The second, maintain separate financial accounts for both personal and business. And lastly, be proactive about speaking to your tax professional when changes occur in your business. Now, take some time to visit Heather's website at tax-queen.com. There you can find links to her YouTube channel and social media accounts, which of course I'll list in the show notes too. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us today.
Ever found yourself lost in the middle of nowhere with no signal? With the RV Life app, that's a thing of the past. Enjoy reliable offline navigation, lane guidance, and turn-by-turn voice directions, ensuring you're always on the right path. Navigate the open road with ease and confidence. Visit RVlife.com to download the app today and start exploring without limits.